Hello and welcome. In this video I will talk about how you can make a robot fly using a glitch for the wheels in Robocraft 2. Keep in mind this is super early alpha build of the game, so this will no doubt be patched later on. So if you are watching this from the future, you can watch it more like some curiosity of the really early Robocraft 2 days. Anyway, let's get going. This guide is not for the inexperienced Robocraft builder, it's more for you who already built a lot of stuff in Robocraft and want to experiment a bit, maybe already tried to make something that fly but failed and can't really figure out why. So I will talk a bit more about just the details, how you actually use the glitch to fly and some underlying mechanics why it works. Not that the robot I built so far performed very well in battle. It's very stable, you can fly it around the map, but I'm sure with some time and tuning you can make something that will actually somewhat be useful. I found the biggest problem actually using it in multiplayer was everyone got line of sight towards you, and the people just gonna go like, oh, there's a flying robot, and everyone's gonna aim for you. So that's the main downside, I guess. When I first tried to build something to get it off the ground, because I had seen some other people do really amazing stuff with it, some really cool artboard builds, I had a lot of trouble. I copied stuff I saw from screenshots. It looked the exact same way but didn't seem to work. I went on kind of pestering in PMs people who had working stuff, what they did. And actually that kind of made it work for me, because the thing they told me, or the thing that someone on the Robocraft Discord called Vox Serico, who made an amazing airship using this glitch, told me was that I need to tune it. That's why it doesn't work. And by tuning it, he meant the distance between the wheel and the plate that make the glitch work. And the pistons, how hard they pressure against that plate. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's start with the basics of wheel glitch flight. The basics of wheel glitch flight is that if you have a part of the robot that is not connected to the rest of the robot pressuring against the wheel will think that that is ground. So it will apply a force towards the ground, and it doesn't matter that that ground points right up into the sky. Meaning that if you wedge in a plate in between other plates, so it's not attached to the rest of the robot, but still stuck inside the rest of the robot, and then you use a piston to push the wheel towards the plate, it will actually create lift or a force. You can also, of course, use a piston to push the plate against the wheel. That works just as well. So the first thing that is important to keep in mind, and I've seen people fail due to not understanding this, more wheels and more plates does not equal more lift. In Robocraft 2, as for now, all the robots that are wheel-based got the same horsepower. Adding more wheels does not add more horsepower, and what you essentially do with this glitch is just make the robot think it's driving uphill into the sky. And you don't get more horsepower just because you add more wheels while driving upwards this steep hill into the sky. So think about this more like the physics of you being wedged in between two very tight mountain sides with the wheels, or an elevator shaft for that matter, with the wheels pressuring towards each of the sides and trying to drive upwards. More wheels adds more friction, more points of control, but it does not create more lift, more horsepower to drive yourself upwards. So if you make the robot too heavy, it doesn't matter if you slap another 8 wheels on there, it won't lift anyway. Rather the opposite, since wheels are heavy. The second thing that is really important to create lift is that you have friction against those plates. And here we get back to what Vox Serico told me about, that I need to tune it. The thing is, if the wheels are not pressured hard enough against that surface, you won't get friction. But if they're also not pressured, or if they're pressured too much, they might clip through and you won't get friction either. Now there's some more than just the pressure when we talk about tuning here, something I discovered by myself by experimenting. that weight also matters. And by that I mean that ultra light is not exactly the best option. People go like, okay, so I don't have lift, I will just make my robot lighter and it will lift, and it will get the opposite effect. And often if you just add the weight, it will actually eventually lift. And this is a bit speculation on my part, but I think the weight of the robot is used by FreeJam when they calculate the force and the friction against the ground. So if your robot is too light, you won't really get much friction against the ground, which means you don't get lift. There's of course another end of the spectrum where your robot is so heavy that your horsepower is, regardless how much friction you have, won't be able to pull the robot up in the air. But if your robot does not work, despite having copied someone's design, despite looking at the pictures and saying this looks exactly the same as that robot I see that actually flies around, but it just won't lift, or at least the little engine, just add more weight. A lot of times that will actually make it lift up into the sky. So a good way to balance weight is actually add more weight until it lifts and keep adding until it stops lifting, and then slowly remove to kind of find the optimal weight for the robot. The other two things to balance is the pressure of the wheel against the plate and the speed of the wheel. So the pressure and the wheel can be both controlled by the same very easy logical functions. You can use, or at least I think the easiest way to solve this is using constant plates, where you set, for example, a value of 0.8, 0.9, and then you go like the thing that powers the wheel through that plate to the wheel. So if it's set to 0.8, you will get 0.8 of the power, and same for the pressure for the piston. So that way you can easily tweak up and down between different pressures to see what creates the best lift, the best friction against the plate. One last tip when it comes to creating lift is that if it still fails, regardless of following every step correctly, remove the pilot seat and put it on the side of the robot and see if it lifts. Because in some certain positions, the robot seat can actually bug out the glitch, at least from my experiments. So then you just need to position the pilot seat a bit different in the robot in regards to where the wheels are placed, and that will solve this issue. Finally, when it comes to steering, this is actually the reason for having several different wheels pulling the robot up into the sky, not lift. It makes it a lot easier to balance and steer the robot if you have several points of control of lift. Because the easiest way I found to steer the robot is simply by having that force, upwards force, directed a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, backward, forward, by tilting the wheels. Now I think I actually can improve a lot on my build when it comes to steering and how that force is applied to make a faster and better steered robot. So I won't really go into what I think is the ultimate steering or how you set that up, because I think I'm not myself there with the robot yet. It's just balanced and works. It's not super good when it comes to controls. But anyway, that makes it a lot easier if you have those different points of lift to work with when creating the steering. You actually don't need any logic for the lift. So all the logic I used in my build is for the steering. To have different keys to control the same hinge or the same rotor in different ways, different directions, depending on different key inputs. And that's pretty much what I used all the logic for. So you don't need any logic to lift. You don't probably need any logic to navigate or be able to turn either, if you can just live with a bit worse keybinds for doing so. That was all. Hope you found this video useful. I will provide some relevant links as well in the video description. Cheers!